All right. Hello, good morning. Sorry, I'm a little bit late. Good evening. Yes, Olga. I was a little bit late and then my internet wouldn't work. That's how it goes. So, um, okay. We're starting to move. Okay, so now we're going to be in class 7 and there's a we're beginning to shift a little bit into what are the differences between the mind only school and then the middle way school. So we've had our brains stuck, in this other idea, like this lower idea of emptiness. Please don't advertise classes in the beginning of class. Not the right time, Maria. um, yeah, afterward. So we're going to go over once again what are the three primary attributes of the mind only school and why are they helpful? Like, why is it helpful for us to take a step backwards in order to take a step forwards? And we learned in the last class that Kagyu Kempa Darge basically said the point of the mind only school is for those people who are not yet ready for the middle way presentation in the second turning. And he says specifically, and I want to read it, make sure I have this correctly. Right. So basically, the idea is that you're using the third turning, the mind only school, and the reinterpretation, right? So they can understand the second school. So the third school is kind of like help. It's like help, I don't get it. And so the idea really is that when you have the highest view, the ultimate view of emptiness, and let's just be real. Okay, let's get out of philosophy. How many of us walk around all day and then like, oh, that's coming from me, that's coming from me, that's coming from me, that's coming from me. You can repeat the mantra. Okay. You can say it all day long. But anytime you have any kind of reaction to something, or you have an expectation that someone should behave in a certain way, or someone's not giving you what you want, or things are going sideways, or you blah, 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 whatever the blah, blah is of the day, because we all have our blah, blah. Okay. We're not in the middle. We're not in the second turning of the wheel. We're not, because it's the ultimate view. It's the highest view. I mean, even an Arya who has seen emptiness directly comes out of that experience. And what happens to them? Is everything all bubbles and rainbows and unicorns? I mean, if those are things you like. No, it's not. Like, the only difference is that that person knows that they're wrong 100%. They still see things coming from their own side. They still see it. And so, we can call ourselves, oh, we're so middle way. Yeah, shut up. Okay. Even an Arya. And if you are an Arya, I don't know. But if you are an Arya, you know, you're wrong. And so you actually would shut up. Get it? You would actually shut that face hole and you would shut that mind. Then you'd be like, no, that's wrong. And then you have to habituate yourself to that shift. Right. So the mind only school, in a lot of ways, we learned earlier it's like training wheels on a bicycle, right? A bicycle has two wheels, right? And until you learn how to ride with enough speed, right? And then the forces of the wheels actually what keep you up, and then your body is like knows how to feel those forces, then you need those extra wheels. You need the extra wheels in the back of the bicycle to keep it from tipping over. And so the mind only school is a tremendous way to get you to start seeing the highest view, to push you into the experience of seeing the highest view, to have the direct experience of that. Okay. So let's not take it like, oh, this is a lower view. Like you should actually be like excited because it breaks it down into things that we can chew on and kind of um, reflects the way that we're actually perceiving things currently. Okay. Because if it's too far removed from that, it's you don't know what to do. It's too jarring. It's too opposite, right? It's like being put into a foreign country and you don't know the language at all, right? You don't even know how to say hello. You don't know how to say thank you. You don't know how to be like bathroom, like so that's why we're going to go through it. So let's go through it again. What are the three elements? First one is kuntaks, right? We call them constructs. These are the things that we're actually focusing on. All the other stuff, you can, it's a little bit easier actually. We're talking about things that appear to us as constructs, even though we might see them as not constructs. And so our first step really is how do we deconstruct? This is the mind only school is a deconstruction. It's like taking apart a building, right? And instead of collapsing the building, you're just taking it apart piece by piece. So what pieces are you taking out? You're taking out the pieces that don't exist by definition. And what are those pieces? Oh, your kuntaks. Oh, the things you're constructing. Well, what are those things you're constructing? Oh, anything that is, nothing has a name. Nothing can be called what it's called. Like what? I don't know, the baby Tashi, right? You put the name Tashi onto it, right? The it is there. Okay, that's the mind only school. The it is there. The thing is there, right? The object is there. Just it's not even potential. It's just there. It's doing its thing. The baby boy is there, or the baby girl. Okay. And then we go tashi. And it becomes this, it's like putting a blanket around the object, the thing, the blob, the baby boy. The baby boy is there. Okay. But you think it's tashi, right? And why isn't it tashi? Because it could have been Maria. It could have been Violet. It could have been Bob. Right? Oh, well, Tim, it's a baby boy. You can't call it Violet. Well, what? Okay, then let's take the name Violet. Like the construct, it's a girl's name, right? There's no girlness to the name Violet, just like there's no boyness to the name Bob. It's just a convention, it's just a construct. We could decide in 100 years that all boys are named Violet and all girls are named Blue, right? Or that all Anastasias are boys and all Victors are girls. Okay, right? Like there's no reason why a certain name has to be for a gender. But then we get all upset about it when someone gives them a name that doesn't match the gender. Have you seen people get upset about it? Or get confused? Oh my God, that's a girl's name, but you're a boy. I don't know what to do. Right? Or when someone in the grocery store, I have this thing that happens to me oftentimes. I'll be in line at the grocery store, like looking at the candy or looking at a magazine, waiting for my turn. And then the checkout person goes, "Ma'am, can I help you?" Right. And I'm like, here it comes. This will be fun, right? So then I look up, and when I shaved my face like closely, right? Even sometimes, they didn't notice, or I'd be like, hello. Right? But even then, does a low voice mean a boy? Right? Right. Okay, BB has it. Right. So see, like we have these built-in things in our world that we think exist by definition. And then we get all upset about it when it's not what we thought it was. Okay, Tashi is an easy thing because we can call Tashi violets, no problem, right? But as soon as we call the boy Tashi Violet, in English at least, people are going to be like, wait, 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 wait. You just gave a boy a girl's name. What are you doing? Right? Now it becomes a problem. Why is it a problem? Because of the construct. Because you think there's something there that exists by definition. The baby boy, the name Violet, right? They have gendered aspects to them that are inherent within them, right? And then you get all upset about it. I mean, this is just one, excuse me, this is just one example. You see somebody doing something and then you go, oh, that's wrong. Or, oh, you're not doing what I expect you to do. You're not being nice to me, or you're ignoring me, or you're being mean to me. You're being cruel to me. right? All of those labels, you think the cruelness is in the object, is in the person. And then all of your behaviors will be like, you'll then start fighting that cruelness, right? But if you can pull the label off of it, the name, it's not called anything from its own side. There's nothing in it that calls it cruel. There's nothing in it that calls it violent. There's nothing in it that calls it tashi. Because if it were, everyone would look at it and be like, oh, that's tashi. Right? That baby would pop out, like comes out of mom, and everyone goes, Tashi. Right. And there's a big worldwide celebration, right? It's like reality TV. Although let's be polite about it. The camera is on the other side of the room and they pick up the baby. Okay, let's be polite. They pick up the baby, right? To protect the privacy of the mother, which some reality TV does not protect privacy. And then all of a sudden the whole world exclaims at the same time, Tashi, right? Right? That's what a construct is. Now, what happens when we have different constructs? You think I'm being cruel. I think I'm being a teacher. Which one's correct? Now we have a fight, right? Now we have a fight, right? Right. My construct is different than your construct, and my construct is right. Your construct is wrong, you see. And so then all of a sudden, now you can see where fighting comes from. Don't fight other people's constructs. Fight your own. Why do you see it that way? Why do you see it that way? And that becomes, and that's okay, because there's still a little baby boy out there. Right? There's a little baby boy out there. Okay. And we get up on the mountain, as someone just suggested, Lion King is like, I go, Tashi the second, the next king, right? And everyone goes, that's a stupid name. We should call it Simba, right? you know, Whatever you call it, right? So that's why the mind only school is relaxing in some ways, because the middle way school is like, wow, there's not even anything there from its own side. Even the baby boy is not there from its own side. Right. Then the whole thing starts breaking down. And you're like, but I see a baby boy. Okay, fine. You see a baby boy. In fact, it's enough to understand there is a baby boy there, and you put label Tashi on top of it. That's enough to get to emptiness. No problem. That's enough to force your mind into recognizing that, you're just putting, you're putting labels on the parts, right? And each of those parts have an emptiness, and they're not there from their own side. And, that's fine. But we don't have to go that far. And then so in the mind only school, then the emptiness is you have your baby boy called Tashi. You take away Tashi, and then you have its totality. Then you have its emptiness, right? That's all. And the emptiness exists by definition, and the shengwang and the boy, the little baby boy exists by definition. That's okay, right? Take away your kuntaks, then you've come to the emptiness, because you can't experience a shengwang without a kuntak. That's what the mind only school says. You can't experience a baby boy without Tashi. Okay, Tim. Well, we haven't given the baby boy a name yet. Well, you did. You called it the baby boy. There's still a Sheng one there that you called the baby, right? Our baby, right? Right? You gave it a name. You gave it a kuntak, right? Then you start seeing all the kuntaks around you. All right. And so the point of the third turning of the wheel is that we must have it reinterpreted. Okay. And that's the point of this picture, the last one on the slide, right? We need someone to interpret what the second turning meant. What did it mean? Oh, well, actually, what I meant was we're just talking about constructs. We're just talking about kuntaks. We're talking about tashis. We're talking about Franciscos. Okay. We're talking about the names that we apply to things that we think are in those shengwangs, that we think that are in those dependent things. It's kind of funny. I just realized I was taking the pose. I was doing this. I was doing exactly what this guy's doing. Right? I'm taking this pose and I'm reinterpreting the mind only, the second turning of the wheel. Okay. That's what it looked like, right? when I teach. So notice that I put polynomials in the background. Get it? I talked about math a couple classes ago. It was on purpose. So we need to have it reinterpreted. That's all. It's just a stepping stone, but a very powerful stepping stone. Because when you can't, exist in the middle way, then it's time to just, then you just take your time. You do constructs. Because most of those things are going to be enough to help change your life. For you to realize how many things you are constructing right now, the status of your relationship, the way you feel about your partner, the way your partner is, the way your kids are, the way your boss is, the way your teacher is, the way your health is, all of those things, constructs. Okay. So just start noticing the ways that you think things are the way that you name them. Boys, girls, non-binary, white, black, Asian, right? Chinese, Vietnamese, Japanese, Malaysian, Indonesian, right? Right? What do those words mean to you? You know, Taiwanese. What do they mean? What do those words mean? Right? And if I use the word Chinese, is it the same way that someone else used the words Chinese? Or if I use the word Russian, does it mean the same thing as when someone else uses the word Russian? Right? And we think when we use a word that someone is using it the same way we're using it. This is the lessons. These are the lessons. Right? Because when you understand that when I say Russian and you say Russian, they probably mean different things. Especially if you're from different countries. They mean different things in different historical times. right? When I say Japanese and someone else says Japanese, well, if a Chinese person says Japanese versus a Japanese person saying Japanese or an American saying Japanese, what the hell does it mean? Has historical meanings for different people in different times. We just lump things together in constructs to understand. And then you misunderstand each other. Right? That's the point. Understand your constructs and then change the constructs. Why do you change the constructs? Well, that's planting seeds. Like things mean certain things. Maybe they can mean something else from a seed point of view, not from a pretend point of view. Although when you get the diamond way, you do a lot of pretending to create the seeds to create that worldview. So I don't know. There's probably some high value in pretending as well. Pretending, thinking, and like imagining the construct that you want to put on things, even if it's not yet doing it. Maybe something like that. So there's one thing we didn't talk about, which we've actually talked about um, in another class, but I want to go over it again. And I keep losing it for some reason. There it is. Okay. So, historically, people have misunderstood these turnings of the wheels. As you can tell, there's many different interpretations. There's the interpretation of you know, the mind only school says it's a certain way. A mind onlyist would say, yes, the third turning is literal. And a Majamikan would say, well, no, the second one is literal. And then we have to interpret one and three. And then there's other ones that say all three are literal, you know. So there's this constant differences of opinion. And then there's one idea that comes up that even we misinterpret from time to time. And it's this phrase called the Buddha nature. That there's this belief that there's something within us that is already the Buddha. That we do just Did you guys lose me? Yes. I was watching the interpreters and they were all like, what? Okay. See, the thing is, you can even hear what I said. And I said, there is a misinterpretation that we that there's a Buddha nature inside of us. We are already Buddhas, right? But we just have to uncover it. We have to remove the things that are in the way to arrive at the Buddha that we already are. So when the Buddha said something like the essence of the ones who have gone that way, we just need to reveal it, right? But they think that there's some inherent nature of Buddha-ness already in us. We have a self nature that we just have to reveal. Okay. But what the Buddha was really talking about was primarily the emptiness of our own mind, which allows us that one day that we have the potential to see our minds as enlightened. Okay. Now, this idea gets wildly complicated when you try to interpret it from a mind only perspective. Okay. From a Kuntak, a Shenwang, and a Yongdrup. Right. Like, and I invite you to think about it yourself. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Because in the mind only school, we understand that emptiness does exist by definition. You take your Shenwangs, you remove all the kuntaks, and then you have emptiness. Okay. So is emptiness a positive thing or a negative thing? Is emptiness an absence? Or is that emptiness a thing? Like if something exists by definition, right? So you have to think about it. So, how can we think of Buddha nature, our own Buddha nature, which means our own potential to become that? How would the mind only school talk about it? And where's the, where's the issue? And if you meditate on it, you meditate on the three aspects and Buddha nature, because it's not something you just reveal, like in the, the upper middle way will say. You know, think about it. You can think about it. All right. So now we're moving on to the innovator of the mind only school. How do we have the mind only school in the form that it is today? And so this came down from our friend Arya Sangha. And you probably know Asanga from the story of when he met Maitreya. He was meditating for years and years and years. He kept coming out of a 3-year retreat. He did 4 3-year retreats in a row, trying to meet Maitreya. It didn't work. Finally gives up, walks back to town, sees a dog who is run over by a cart. There's little tiny worms inside the dog. The dog is, basically dying. And out of compassion, he tries to save the dog. But then he realizes he has to save the worms too, because he can't pick them out because he's squishing them. So he goes to use his tongue to take those worms out of the dog. And because of that act of compassion, Maitreya appears to him. His karma changed because of compassion, finally had an act of true compassion. And when he was seeing a dog, he then saw Maitreya. And so finally having met Maitreya, super excited and a little pissed off that took 12 years, right? He's like, dude, where have you been? And Maitreya was like, I've always been here. You just didn't have the Kelwa to see me yet. And then so Maitreya then takes him off to Tushita Paradise and then teaches him what is known as the 5 great books of Asanga, the 5 great books of Maitreya. One of those books, the Abhisamaya Alankara, is a presentation of the lower middle way, which is the book I'm translating, and its commentary by Kedrup Tempa And Asanga also is known for being the primary innovator of the middle way of the mind only school. And so he basically was the one who took the sutras and then presented them in a new way to help people. You know, he learned this from Maitreya, the future Buddha, probably pretty smart. And so one of his great books is a commentary of what the Buddha really meant. So basically, he used the commentary on the true intent, which is what we've been going over, as the basis to innovate. And what I mean innovate is he set forth a new way to understand the ideas in the sutras. He made it accessible for a new culture, a new time. Right. And that's what Aryas do. They take the ideas which don't change. I mean, emptiness is, understanding that things come from their own side or don't come from their own side, depending how you see it. That's not changing. But the times change, the people change, the languages change, the kuntaks change. And get it? So you have to use people's kuntaks so then they're able to understand how those kuntaks don't necessarily apply to Shenwangs. Right. And that's what innovators do. It's like updating the opera. It's like updating, right? It's just updating language. It's updating cultural norms, being relevant to people, right? It's not that they set forth new ideas, because the ideas are the ideas. They're not changing, right? And so that's why we call them innovators. And Aryas are not all Aryas are innovators, but all innovators are Aryas. How about that? So he wrote a lot of cool things on this. And the way that he comes at the mind only school is he talks about it in terms of the two extremes. Okay. And this is where, am I still sharing my screen? I still am. All right, that's fine. And this class is we're going to be discussing what those two extremes are. You've heard about them, I'm sure, but they're different in the mind only school than they are in the middle way school. And understanding the difference between the two is key to understanding emptiness. One of the keys. How about that? And they're subtly different, and it's taken me some time to sort it all out myself. But the idea of the extremes as, so we have this guy walking on a bridge, and there's two directions that you can fall off. If the wind blows too hard, it can fall to the left, or you can fall off to the right. And so the idea is that you want to find the path between not falling left and not falling right. Okay. So what are those two extremes in general? Okay. And then we're going to go to the specifics of the mind only school and the middle way school. So it actually might be helpful in your notes is to like kind of write two extremes, right? You have like the two here, and then you have middle way school and mind only school. So make a little chart and then come back to it. Roxana, I see how bored you are yawning over there. I'll make a chart. Oh, that's so lame. Not lame. Everyone make a chart. It's really nice to have a pen and paper. There's several of you I consistently tell you to take notes, and I know that you don't. So telling you to do it again. Maybe someday you will listen. And I don't know why I have to see that. So, what are the two? There's two sides to this. There's one side, let's call it we'll just call it the left side. It doesn't have to be left or right. Let's call it the left side. Jundok. All right. Which, and an easy way to understand Jundok would mean to overestimate, go too far, overdo it. All right. Like people who take things over literally, right? You say something and they're like, but you said 3 years ago. Well, yeah, I said it 3 years ago, but it's different now. Right? You overdo it, overcorrect. In this case, it's about existence. Like you think something is there that's not. Okay. So you're over extending your application of what is existing. Jundok. You think something is there that's not, that's actually not there. You think something exists when it actually doesn't. That's one side. Okay. Like you can, like if you want to get like emojis or something, put a thumbs up next to it. Right. You're overdoing it, like pointing upwards, or you can point upwards, right? You can use your middle finger too if you want. Up and down. Maybe that'll help. I don't know. Do something. Help yourself understand. One is too much. You're too muching it. Too muching it. You're too literal. You're thinking things exist. Something exists when it doesn't. That's one side of the extreme. Second side of the extreme, the Kunde. That's the opposite. That's underestimating. Down, right? Pointing down, whatever. Whatever image works for you. Okay. Or typically means that you think something doesn't exist when it actually does. Now, that's more of a middle way definition. Now we have to get into mind only school. Okay. So this is where you need to have your notes, and this is where we're going to use the three attributes. Okay. Overestimating. Okay. We're going to call this concocting. This is the act of kuntaking, the act of making a kuntak. Okay. You think the kuntak exists. Okay. I didn't say, Marina, that things don't have any meaning at all. That's an extreme. You just thank you for showing everybody that you went to the extreme. This is what happens. People go to an extreme on one side, and then because the extreme is not because the that extreme is doesn't work, they go to the other extreme. It's like a pendulum. They go one side and then they go to the other side. The mind does this. That's the point. The mind does this. So the first extreme in the mind only school is concocting things. The act of kuntaking, because you think kuntaks exist. Tashi exists, right? The name Tashi applies to the baby boy. Okay. You're overestimating what is existing. So that's the extreme in the mind only school. You think the name that's given to the baby boy Tashi is inherent in the baby boy Tashi, or tree, or anger, or cruelty, or happiness. You think it's in the thing. You think that pill is going to make you feel better. The health is in the pill, right? You think there's a thing in it, and it's the name that you put on it. Okay, that's the over extreme. That's the Drundok. Now, what is the other extreme? Okay, this is where it gets a little subtle. And this is where we say discounting things. All right. Because you think that, because then when you realize that you're just kun talking around all day, then you think that nothing exists. You underestimate it, right? But what exists in the mind only school by definition? Oh, Shengwangs and Young groups, right? So then you discount things that do actually exist. You Kurndep, you underestimate them. Mind only school. We're in the mind only school. 3 attributes. Your chart should have in mind only Kuntaks in the overestimate. And then you should have Shengwangs and totality in the underestimate one. Because what happens is you think, well, because Tashi is just a name and it could be anything else, well, then there's nothing there. Right? And the mind only school is like, well, hold on just a second. The Buddha talked about 3 attributes. And in those 2 of those 3 attributes exist by definition. So the idea that Arya Sangha gives us is he shows us the ways that we move our mind, like what Marina showed us in the chat. Like, oh, just because I said it 3 years ago, then it has no meaning at all, right? 3 years ago it was meaningful, but now, because it was 3 years ago, it doesn't have any meaning. No, that's an extreme. Like you go literally from one side to the other side. You take literal, like your mind is doing binaries on, off, on, off, on, off, exist, non-exist, exist, non-exist, right? And we're going to talk about what the middle way means in a moment. But so that's what our mind does. So what Arya Sangha is saying is, look at yourself. Look at the way that you are constantly extreming your mind between overthinking that things exist and then underthinking that things don't exist when they actually do. Concocting and discounting is the word that we use. All right. Right, Olga. Olga's perfect. It's like when something good happens, it's my fault. When something bad happens, it's your fault. It's somebody else's fault. Right. There's an extreme in there, right? And catching yourself in the extremes is really literally what we're doing all the time. We're interrupting the flow. And when we get to the Lam Rimmon hour, we're going to be learning the ways that we establish the self. And we're not even aware of there's different ways that Pabonka gives us to understand the self. And the innate version of it that's automatic, we don't even notice it most of the time. But we have to learn how to notice it so that we can deny it. All right. So in the mind only school, these extremes are non-existent, right? So this is what you should also write in your chart, right? Under concocting things, overestimating, you think the constructs existed by definition. Or you thought on the other side, dependent things, shengwangs, did not exist by definition. Okay. Both of those things are untrue, but you hold to those extremes, right? So you're holding to that extreme. And those are just the extreme view are those two things. But you're taking one or the other, or you're taking both. You might be holding to both of those ideas incorrectly. And then part of your meditation practice is to catch yourself in that. Like asking yourself the question, why? Like just like make it easy. Don't be like, where am I concocting? How am I kuntaking around? All you need to ask is, why do I have to see this? Which implies there's a kuntak. No, kuntaks do not exist by definition, but the extreme is thinking that they do. So anytime you're upset, anytime someone's not behaving the way you expect them to, you're just kuntaking around. And then you ask yourself, well, why do I see this? Well, it's a kuntak. Okay. Is it necessarily a kuntak? Is it necessary, the kuntak that I'm putting onto it, the only kuntak that can be put onto it? And if you can answer that question, be like, well, no, there might be many ways of doing this. Then all of a sudden, maybe the emotion the dial turns down, right? Maybe the dial just like the intensity of the affliction goes down. Because if someone else could have a different kuntak, then maybe my kuntak is not the only kuntak that's happening. But I want it my way. Yes, I know you want it your way. You can get it your way, but you have to understand that kuntaks don't exist by definition. And then you understand how to make. Nice, Francisco. You can do it your way, but you have to do it the right way. Right? You have to find the seed point of view. Right. So, how would you, in the mind only school, help somebody get over that extreme view? I don't know. Listen to someone who's constantly talking about there's many points of view. You all think you're right. Like the boss, right? The boss who's yelling at you. You're like, I'm getting yelled at by my boss, and the boss's wife is over there. And she's like, oh, he's such an amazing leader. I can't wait to go out to dinner with him tonight and then take him home. Right. Guarantee you, when your boss is yelling at you, you're probably not thinking about, you're not thinking that way about him. Right. I mean, maybe it's like king or something. Maybe that's something that turns you on. But mostly the boss is yelling at you. I'm waiting. I wonder how many of the interpreters said exactly what I just said or just avoided it altogether. Roxana avoided it. She's too polite. The role of the interpreter is to say what the teacher says, not what you think the students want to hear. Maybe there's a reason why I said it. Because even the angry boss, someone else could be turned on by the angry boss and not experiencing it as anger. I give you an example. Not me. I observed this. I was the angry boss once. When I was at the hotels, running the hotels. We had one of the hotels had an employee suite, or an employee room, and then we had someone who lived on property to take care of the guests, right? They got free living expenses. They had to check in the guests and do things, right? So we had someone living there, and she had a boyfriend. Normal thing to do, right? And as a proper employee, she was like, look, I have this boyfriend. Okay, that's nice. Can he come over and stay from time to time? I'm like, cool. I'm a nice guy. Like, she has nowhere else to go, right? They're close with each other. They're intimate. Fine. Okay. He can stay. He can't live there because my insurance policy doesn't cover it, but he can come from time to time. No problem. It's your private living quarters, but I can't have two people officially living in this room. Okay, perfect. Wonderful. And over, in a couple months, as you can kind of expect, things maybe, the boundaries were pushed. I kind of let it happen like I usually let most things happen and don't say anything. I usually just let things happen and, I'm like, oh, that's nice, and let people sort out their own problems, even though technically I probably should have said something. That's what being the boss is. But I let things go. I let a lot of things go actually. Um, Probably because I think they're kuntaks. And I let them understand that they're kuntaks. So if you're kuntaking too much, that might be a reason why I don't respond. Just saying. To let you think about why you're kuntaking. So anyhow, the boundary was being pushed. I kind of was getting a little uncomfortable with it. And so I talked to the employee and I said, hey, look, it seems like he's living here. And, and we just can't do this. And she was like, I know. I've been thinking about it too. And I was like, okay. I said, look, you know, figure it out. I don't just figure it out. Like, I don't want to tell you how to do it. Just, you know, work the problem out. Okay. So she was going on a 2-week vacation. All right. And so I knew this was coming up. And I said, look, when you're not here, he cannot be here, period. He's not an employee. I just can't do this. Legally, I can't do this. She was like, I understand. So she told him. I didn't like the guy to begin with. All right. It's kind of one of those people that takes advantage of the situation and then gets mad when you call them out on it. Like, feels like they deserve something that wasn't actually given to them. And then they get mad when you take away that thing. You know those people, right? If you know those people, it's probably a seed you have too. Anyway, so I show up at, someone says, look, I can't remember his name. Says, look, the guys at the guys at the apartment. Sense of entitlement. Yes, Tracy, nice. So he's there. I go in, and the other employee that we had is this was this her name was Randy. She was so cute. She was like 75 years old. Okay. She's just like doing her like she could only do certain parts of the job, but it was fine. The guests loved her. She was always welcoming and yeah, she couldn't run up and down the stairs, but then we hired other people for that, right? And being 75, like, and she still needed work, so we gave her work. So Randy's 75. Okay. The guy, what was his name? I can't remember. He was about 25. Okay. Just so you know. He was also, he worked in landscaping or something like that, like quite fit, like very healthy, very fit, 25 years old. Okay. Does everyone got the picture? He shouldn't be in the room. 75-year-old lady, boss comes in. Okay. I'm the boss. I walk in and he's in the shower. So not only does he have a sense of entitlement, he's using our resources and he's not paying for them. Okay. So now I'm getting Buddhisty. I'm getting really upset about like the bad seeds that he's planting. Like he's stealing from something that was never given to him in the first place. And he was also told he couldn't stay there. Like he gave leverage, but he was taking advantage of it. Bad seeds, terrible seeds. So I'm quite frustrated and knowing that he's hurting himself. So knock on, and so I knock the door, no answer. Try to open the door. He locked the door from the inside. Okay. So I can't even get into my own room. I have the key, but he locked. There's like the hotel lock. It's like shit. So I knock, knock, knock. He screams out. He's like, "What?" And I said, you know, like through the door, I'm like, you know, you shouldn't be here, and you are here. I'm expecting that you finish your shower and you leave in 5 minutes. Okay. Total silence. So I'm sitting there, I'm having a cookie because we had cookies in the lobby, which makes everybody feel better, right? Cookies make everyone feel better. So I'm eating one of the cookies because I'm a little upset. He comes out and he just has a towel around him, right? And this guy was furious. He was yelling at me. His face was bright red. Like he was so mad. His sense of entitlement like went to the extreme. Yelling, yelling, yelling. He's like, "This is my girlfriend's place. You don't have a right to do this." Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, so I'm trying. I said, well, I said, these employees known for this. This was a gift that we gave so she could have a private and personal life, but you're not authorized to be here. Yells more and more. So I start yelling without being mad. I'm kind of mad and I'm a little scared that he's going to hit me. So it wasn't quite pure. I promise. I'm going to admit it wasn't a pure thing. So he's like totally yelling at me. And I thought he was going to punch me. And I said, look, you are unauthorized. You have unauthorized access to this property. This is private property. You do not live here. You have 10 minutes to vacate. Otherwise, I'm going to call the cops, the police, and we will take you off the property. That's when I thought he was actually going to hit me. But then he thought about it a little bit. He looked over at the old lady. He's like, fine. So he goes back, slams the door, gets dressed, and he leaves. Okay. So I sit down on the couch and I have another cookie, right? Because that's what makes me feel better. And I get up and I said, Randy, look, I'm really, really sorry, that you had to see that. I don't like angry, blah, 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 blah. And she was like, what? I'm like, what? And she goes, what are you talking about? I'm like, I'm really sorry. Like, I don't like getting angry and I don't like yelling at people. And it's just not my thing. And, it's like, I'd like to be clear with boundaries, but I don't like to yell. And that's just not who I am. And, she was like, oh, I didn't even see any of that. He was so beautiful. I'm like, what? She was like, he was so hot. You have no idea. He's 25. I don't get to see boys like that. She was like, and she was like telling me about how she was a little turned on. I was like, Randy, that's enough. So what no, she doesn't have hearing aids. No. So what I was experiencing is anger, and this guy was yelling at me, right? And she was just like turned on by this guy. Okay. That obviously that's something that, she likes strong men apparently. And this guy, he was, yeah. Looking back, I was like, yeah, he's buff, nice to look at for sure. I didn't see a beautiful man with great, sexy muscles. I saw a guy who was stronger than me who could beat me up, right? You see? So your kuntoks are just yours and nobody else's. And you have no idea what's going on for anybody else. I had no idea that Randy was turned on watching this guy yell at me. Okay. So I'm like, okay, great. And that's what's happening to us all day long. You don't know what's going on for somebody else. You see. what's one person's anger could be one person's spiritual kink, right? You never know. Like kuntaks are my spiritual kink. How about that, Anastasia? You see, but you think they exist by definition. That's you think. You think that was an angry person. Which one was it? Was it a 6-year-old boy standing there, or was it, you know, I mean, anyway, you can think about it, right? And so that extreme is that you think it has some self nature, right? And the idea is that we have to remove the tendency to think that it existed ultimately, right? Ultimately, where it's devoid of it. Okay. So let's go to the other extreme. How would you help someone get over the extreme view of discounting things, right? Because the idea is that if you guys turned off all your cameras, that would you would see my wrath. Okay, so dependent things don't exist at all. That's the other extreme, right? The other extreme is that nothing exists at all. So dependent things don't exist at all. Okay. So here's how the mind only school argues this, right? They will say the way that you discount things like dependent things as the extreme, if dependent things, if shengwangs didn't exist by definition, catch this. If dependent things did not exist by definition, there would be nothing to put your kuntak onto. If shengwangs did not exist by definition, and they just didn't exist at all, there would be no place to put the kuntak. So therefore, dependent things exist by definition. The baby boy is there that you put the name Tashi onto. The boy, the name boy that you give to that human is a kuntak, right? Well, why do you call that human a boy? As they say in kindergarten cop, boys have penises and girls have vaginas. The little kid says it, right? Oh, that's what makes it a boy. Okay, great. There's a boy. The word boy is a kuntak, right? Or girl, you see. And then all the things that go around that go like, but if there wasn't a human being there that had male genitalia, you wouldn't call it a boy, right? Or, so then like, look, like this is where then it gets interesting, you know. So there has to be something there, right? That you can name onto. Without something there, there couldn't be a name to put onto it, period. And that's what the mind only school says. And then the mind only schools says, and this is why the middle way is wrong. Who is what group, what thinkers out there completely misunderstood what the Buddha meant. Oh, those middle wayers. Because the middle wayers said nothing exists by definition. So how the hell can you put a name onto something that doesn't even exist? You middle wayers are stupid, idiots. You're so dumb, you're dumb. I don't know how interpreters are going to do that. The way you spell dumb in English is D-U-M-B, but you don't pronounce the B. You just say dumb. But they're so dumb, they're dumb, right? They're so dumb that they mispronounce dumb. I don't know, interpreters. I don't know how you're going to do that. Okay. Those middle wayers are dumba. They're dumb. They're idiots. How could you put a label or even a name onto something if it didn't exist by definition? If it wasn't even there, you couldn't even put anything onto it. So nothing's there. Idiots. That's what the mind only school says. I don't say the word idiot, but I'm just being dramatic, right? But then what does the middle way school? Okay, so now you got to go to your other part of the chart. Middle way. What does the middle way say? The extremes are slightly different, and we say it differently. Okay. And then you have to think about it. And I'll try to explain it in 5 minutes. The first extreme, Jundok, overestimating. So the way the middle way school talks about it is it talks about it in terms of existence, right? If you were to say that something exists, just exists in general, the extreme is that you say that equals, it must exist by definition. I'll say it again. If something exists, you use existing object that's there. It's something. If something is there, okay. The extreme is it exists by definition. So the other side of it, the corn depth, the underestimating, is it kind of flips the equation. Okay, so if the extreme is it must exist by definition, the opposite would be, well, then it doesn't exist by definition. So if you go to that other opposite and say it doesn't exist by definition, the extreme view is then it doesn't exist at all. I'll say it again. You start with, hey, there's something there. I don't know, a water bottle. Let's just take a water bottle. It exists. I can see it. I can perceive it. It's an existing object. Great. Well, because it's an existing object, the extreme is, well, then it exists by definition, meaning it exists on its own, self-standing, through some nature of its own. Okay. And you say that's an extreme. It's an extreme view to say it exists by definition. Okay, smarty pants. Well, then, if it doesn't exist by definition, what's the extreme? That doesn't exist at all. Okay. And so they're slightly different in their take on it. But basically, the idea is how do you find the space in between? Does exist, but it doesn't outside still standing. But if it doesn't exist, if it doesn't exist by definition, self-standing on its own from its own side, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Okay. There's something, there's a way in between that, right? Just because something doesn't exist by definition from its own side doesn't mean that it's non-existent. And that's what the middle way school says. And you have to like park yourself and move yourself between those two things. Because the first one, the first extreme leads to the second. The first extreme of, well, because it exists, it has to exist by definition. And then you go, whoa, 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 no, it doesn't. It's coming from you, right? No, 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 no. And then you go, well, okay, well, then if it doesn't exist by definition, then it doesn't exist at all. To the other side, right? And so, and this is what happens to our mind. It goes too far. Like we live in the world of things by definition, right? That's our world. We're going to be like, yeah, there they all are. It's all existing, right? It's there. It's out there by itself on its own. No relationship to me. It's just there. And then when you start giving a bad teaching on emptiness, or what happens is you get a teaching on emptiness and you go, well, nothing exists. And that's what the Buddha said in the second turning, right? Nothing exists. No nose, no ears, no eyes, no mouth, no tongue, no feelings, no thoughts, right? Nothing exists, right? But that's not what it means, as we know. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist from its own side. It's not there by itself. The act of the observer and the object are intricately linked. Like you can't have something without a perceiver. Without the perceiver, is there something there? You don't know. Then it doesn't mean it's non-existent. And then Anastasia asked a tantric question, which I cannot answer, but the answer is yes. She asked a question about, do the extremes correlate with the channels, the prana in the body? And the answer is yes. The way that the prana moves indicates the ways in which the extremes are moving through you, the way you're perceiving them. And it's the battle is real. Okay. You know, even an Arya who has seen emptiness directly, it's right. They probably don't have this emotional reaction that the rest of us do, but you still see things incorrectly, including yourself, including your emotions, including, the inner landscape. It's just how you handle it is probably very, very different. All right. Those were the extremes. I don't think I showed you half the pictures. Yeah, you guys have all this stuff. Okay. All right, cool. That was class 7. Yay. We will see you on Monday for class 8. We have four more classes, three more ACI classes, then we'll have one review. Um, well, we'll probably talk more about the future then. Again, if you're interested in the review courses 16, 17, and 18, Anastasia is organizing. I know lots of people have reached out. Um, I am incredibly busy, if you guys didn't know. I've spent over 30 hours this week just preparing classes. Okay. Not to mention 10 people in ACI who are direct reports, not to mention managing a whole other series of organizations, not to mention things that are happening like the legacy organization of Geshe Michael. All right. So, not to mention that I kind of want a personal life from time to time. Right. So, there's lots of things that we're doing in ACI that we need help with. I need help with. I can't keep doing it on my own, right? And that's why we have people, and that's why we need volunteers. And if you're called to it, there's plenty of opportunities to help ACI directly, help these courses, help the growth of the five houses. We're going to be spending a lot of time in October with curriculum development of the five houses and even trying to find volunteer directors because we don't have money yet. But I need to find money. If anyone wants to help with fundraising, please reach out. you know, Money is expensive. I spend a lot of time trying to find money, and you have to spend money to make money. It's right. You know, I don't I don't have a few spare minutes in a day. And I'm sorry that I can't respond to every message that comes. I try to read everything when it's appropriate, when I can. I'm not ignoring most people. That's a my ingok. Get it? Maybe I'm ignoring some people. But in general, I don't ignore people. It's just I don't have time to respond to everything. Because what we're doing, there's so many things going on, so many good things. There's so many people who are involved. There's so many people who are interested. And there's so many people that could use a little lessons in kun talking, right? Outside of the ACI world, right? Like, how are we going to teach kun talking to normal people? It's not normal that you all are here, right? There's so few people who are actually interested in all the details. Like, how can we teach people the generalities of kun talking without even going really into emptiness? And then how to change your kun talks through seats and caring for other people. Like, that's our goal. Our goal is to learn all the stuff, but then impact the world, reach people in our own ways. You see, you know, wouldn't it be great if 1,000 people showed up for classes like this? But there's a certain level of like intensity to these classes you really have to be the type who wants to change to come to these classes. But if we can give little like Instagram nuggets to people for 15 seconds about their kun talks, slowly their seeds will change. And your seeds will change too. And just because you're in this doesn't mean it's easy. It's a journey. I hate that word journey. It's an epic journey. You know, the change is it's a massive change that you're trying to do, and I'm proud that you're trying. It's hard. It's not easy. It has difficulties. It has, nothing is straightforward, nothing is clear because it's all kun talks. You're just kun talking around all the time. And until you realize it, even when you do realize it, it's still hard. But then there's possibility and there's hope. And that's what I hope we can do, is to provide that to others. I've kind of dedicated my life to it, and my life is very, very busy. And any help that we can have at the five houses, is helping, right? Anything you can do would be amazing. And thinking about it from your own seed point of view, if you want to be a little selfish about it, but be selfish, and then it helps everybody, including you. All right, cool. Let's take a little bit of a break. We'll be back in 20 minutes or so for some Lam Rim translation. It's getting good. It's getting really good. And then if you're not sticking around, we'll see you on Monday. So please, please, please say goodbye to each other. These are your friends. These are your compatriots, compadres. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Namaskaram.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Hasta
Muchas gracias.
We love
Gracias.
you.
Gracias.
Gracias, team.
Thank you, team.
Thank